Now we are live on YouTube as well. All right. Good morning. Welcome to the First UU Church of Indiana, Pennsylvania. If that's not the church you meant to be at today, this is your moment to exit the aircraft. But otherwise, thank you all so much for being here. It's wonderful to have people here in our worship space with us this Sunday, as well as joining us online through the magic of the internet with Zoom and YouTube live streams. So if you are here on Zoom, we ask that you turn off your microphones for the duration of the service. If you're here in person, well, you can figure that out. We are meeting masked while we are in the sanctuary, so do please remember we keep masks over our noses and mouths completely, especially for singing. While we know that many people have been vaccinated, we have children under the age of 12 who cannot be vaccinated yet in our community, as well as folks who may be immune compromised or have other reasons that they cannot yet be vaccinated. And so as a measure to protect all of us, we do ask that you be attentive to mask wearing, and we thank you for that. We also have live outdoor religious exploration for all of our children and youth all summer. So kids are on the lawn with our Director of Religious Exploration, Penny Vick. And now I invite you all to take a breath, settle in. Our Prelude Hymn this morning is number 1000 in your teal hymnal. Morning Has Come. If you're on Zoom, the lyrics will be in your chat bar. If you're live, just pick up a hymnal. And you can rise to join in song.
Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each
Welcome. I am Josiah Grumley, a member of the worship team today, and I'm glad to be here with you. On behalf of the entire congregation, thank you for being here in person, on Zoom, or via YouTube. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. Please fill out a blue visitor sheet at the welcome table before you go. We'll make sure you are personally welcomed and added to our weekly newsletter mailing list. If you are joining online, send an email to office@firstuu-indianapa.org to join our newsletter mailing list. On Zoom, you'll see the chat button below the video screen. Use that feature for our greetings, chalice lighting, and for joys and concerns during the service. The First Unitarian Universalist Church of Indiana, PA is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association. We are a self-governing congregations united in a web of mutuality that creates our denomination. We have no creed or doctrine, teaching that all individuals have the right and the responsibility to discern and follow their own spiritual paths. We come together to support and assist each other in our journeys, and to build our beloved community together. I invite you to stay after the service to greet one another and rejoice in our mutual presence. We will open the microphones on Zoom for coffee hour, and folks here in person, you will be welcome to come up and say hello at the computer stand to those joining us electronically. Our special congregational meeting will follow the service. We'll be updating the bylaws and deciding on a search team. So members, please make sure you either attend in person or send in your absentee ballots via the 2 Google forms you received on email. Now I invite you to take a breath, settle yourself into a spirit of worship.
Our call to worship comes from the Reverend Jessica Starr Rockers. She writes, "Every Sunday morning growing up, my father would take us to Mass at St. Peter's Catholic Church. I loved the hymns, the smells and bells, as they say, but sermons were kind of a bore. So I would occupy myself by counting the cuts and scrapes and bruises on my father's hands. My dad was an electrician and a farmer, working with his hands from before the sun came up until long after it went down. So every week, I would take his large hands in my little ones, turning them over, examining, discovering new bruises, and keeping track of the healing of old ones. I would count the wounds and whisper the tally in his ear. I loved that he let me hold and investigate his hands in this way, snuggled up next to him in the pew, in the quiet of the church, with just the priest's voice in the background. Having 2 jobs that demanded his attention, my dad didn't always have time for such intimacies, except on Sunday morning. And I took pride in those wounds. It was evidence of how hard my dad worked to take care of his family. He was a man who was often uncomfortable with expressing affection, but I could see in those hands how much he loved me. Was my dad a good dad? Was he there for me when I needed him? Did he protect me and provide for me? Did he care about me? When I ask myself those questions, I think of his hands.
And now, let us light our chalice. On Zoom, you may type, "The flame is lit," and say where you are joining us from the chat bar. Our chalice lighting words will be in your chat bar. We dedicate the lighting of our chalice today in honor of the hands of our fathers, for all the ways and all the hard work that they do to show us we are loved.
And now, if you will rise in body or in spirit and join me in singing hymn number 23, Bring Many Names, which you will find in your gray hymnal or in the chat bar. invite you to see all of these forms of divinity in one another as you pass the sign of peace to one another, especially noticing anyone you maybe haven't met before or haven't seen recently. On Zoom, you might type a blessing in the chat bar for one another, saying something like, "Peace be with you, namaste, shalom, salam alaikum," or bright blessings.
Peace be with you. Is this one new? It's pretty.
Oh, this one is my ordination.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. I haven't remembered the Columbines. Yeah. Mountains, yeah.
Peace be with you all, my delightfully chatty friends. Our UU moment is a moment to talk about our hymnals, our gray hymnal in particular, the one that we sometimes talk about as, oh, you know, the hymnal with the boring hymns. But I want you to know, those hymns, when they were created, when they were rewritten from many old Christian forms, were a little bit revolutionary. You see, in 1977, the Unitarian Universalists at their General Assembly, which this year's General Assembly is coming up in this coming week. In 1977, the General Assembly constructed a resolution on women in religion. And they, in turn, led to a commission which oversaw the creation of a new hymnal. And this hymnal united the denomination, offering a common body of both songs and readings. And even more importantly, one of the things that they accomplished with this new hymnal explicitly was to remove uniquely masculine language for God. And as of the 70s and 80s, moving those stereotypes that assumed a masculine divinity alone and linked stereotypes about men and women to the imagery for the divine, that was a revolution. Instead of women feeling left out, men hemmed in, people outside the binary nowhere to be found, they imagined something different, like that hymn we just sung, "Bring Many Names." Not a God which is only or barely one thing, but a God which is seen through many faces, many aspects. Let's take a minute to think what stereotypes of God's love might look like, might have looked like at that time, might even still look like for some people. If you think of masculine stereotypes and a God based in solely masculine imagery, what do you think of? This is your moment for audience participation. What are those stereotypes?
I feel like some people would say, like, go to the name in the war of God. Well, I don't feel that God wants us to destroy each other.
Yeah, so a warlike stereotype.
An authority figure rather than a nurturer.
An authority that is not nurturing.
Angry and also like kind of immature.
Sorry, an angry
Angry and immature.
or an immature,
Vengeful.
a vengeful God.
Wrathful,
Wrathful,
the whole Trinity thing. triple
the
X.
Trinity, the Father and Son with the Holy Spirit, maybe even kind of trailing in the background. Yeah, there are also positive images of masculinity as a defender, wisdom, maybe a very logical universe that runs like clockwork. And yet there are so many things missing. If you were asked to describe a feminine goddess, what words might you associate with a goddess based in the feminine?
Love, nurturing.
Nurturing, caring,
Mom.
sorry, wise?
I said mom.
A mom-like figure, yeah.
Yeah.
And more that might think of, might include fertility, the fertile land, dancing or kindness, beauty and art. And yet, there are things which are lacking. When we divide the masculine and feminine apart, emphasizing only one aspect, in either God or in people, we end up with unbalanced role models. And then we end up with unbalanced people. Men who might feel that their desire to create art is too feminine. Women ashamed that their strength is too much, too masculine. People who limit their learning and skills, not because of what they love to do, but because of what they are told is allowed. And so Unitarian Universalists, alongside a whole feminist movement that continues today, imagined more could be possible. Today, we look to a fuller and more whole divinity. We have more available to us as options for healthy masculinity and fathering and nurturing examples which are warm and emotionally full. So today, as we celebrate Father's Day, we celebrate all the forms of parenting, caretaking, and nurturing that are examples and options for a healthy masculinity, that are strong and tender, warm and emotional, and powerful and loving. Today we celebrate the healthy masculine energy among us, which is one part of a healthy, well-rounded, holy human community. So let us read together the words of our 7 principles, which you can find in your Zoom chat or in the front of your order of service or in the front of your gray hymnal. Unitarian Universalists covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience, and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part.
Our centering reading is The Man Watching by Rainier Marie Rilke. I can tell by the way the trees beat after so many dull days on my worried window panes that a storm is coming. I hear the far-off fields say things I can't bear without a friend, can't love without a sister. The storm, the shifter of shapes, drives on across the woods and across time, and the world looks as if it had no age. The landscape, like a line in a psalm book, is seriousness and weight and eternity. What we choose to fight is so tiny. What fights with us is so great. If only we would let ourselves be dominated as things do by some immense storm, we would grow strong too and not need names. When we win, it's with the small things, and the triumph itself makes us small. What is extraordinary and eternal does not want to be bent by us. I mean the angel who appeared to the wrestler of the Old Testament. When the wrestler's sinews grew long like metal strings, he felt them under his fingers like chords of deep music. Whoever was beaten by this angel, who often simply declined to fight, went away proud and strengthened and great from that harsh hand that kneaded him as if to change his shape. Winning does not tempt that man. This is how he grows, by being defeated decisively by constantly greater beings. I now invite you into a time of prayerful contemplation. We begin with a time of silence during which you are invited to come forward and light a candle of intention to represent a joy or sorrow, concern or accomplishment in your life. If you have not already done so, you may hand in your written joy or sorrow to Reverend Elizabeth as you light your candle.
Now is the time that we set aside each Sunday to share together in community all of the joys, sorrows, and mixed blessings of our lives. So let us join hearts and minds together in a spirit of prayer. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, we gather together to share in community. Today is a day for joy and for gratitude. We share in the joy that Juneteenth is now a federal holiday. It is written here, we have been celebrating for many years the end of slavery, at least in our household. And we hold sorrow that others, Native Americans and Asian Americans, may still be waiting, may be the next step. We hold joy as well for the creative, informative Juneteenth celebration that our NAACP right here in Indiana, Pennsylvania put on via Zoom. And gratitude for the delicious menu that they provided to attendees. We hold joy as well for participation in our denomination. This year, all of our delegate slots for General Assembly are filled. And we are so glad to be participating in the national governance of our denomination, with Don Lancaster and Ruth Thomas as our lay leaders. We hold a joy which is mixed, for though our sanctuary is not as full as it sometimes is, it is because many members are away from us traveling and reconnecting with family and friends and with nature in ways that were not accessible for over a year. And we hold with Pauline the joy of it feeling good to be back. We also hold in care Pauline's husband, Glenn, who seems to be stable but has an ongoing health concern with congestive heart failure. Please hold Glenn in your thoughts, in your care. And so, for all those cares, those joys held like a spark of blessing in your private heart, those sorrows which are perhaps too tender to share in community out loud, let us hold them as well. And for all the blessings of our lives, may we be grateful. May we acknowledge and hold the beauty of the earth and of the changing seasons, the joy of the summertime when things are planted and growing, and in times of fragile hearts and tender sorrows, may we find comfort and strength. May our hearts be healed, and may we be filled with peace. Amen. Blessed be.
At the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Indiana, PA, we share the plate by giving a portion of every week's donations to an organization outside of the church. This is part of our congregation's mission to promote compassionate and responsible thought and action in the world by giving back to the community around us every week. So when you give this morning, know that you are making an impact not only for this congregation, but also in the wider community through our shared giving. This month, our Share the Plate recipient is the Western Pennsylvania Diaper Bank, a nonprofit organization dedicated to ensuring that every baby in Western PA can be clean, dry, and healthy. This is the only regional nonprofit organization focused solely on the distribution of diapers to families of low income or poverty level. Every $25 in donations can diaper a baby for a full month. And WPDB acts as an informal clearinghouse, referring families to other organizations which focus on the many issues families in need may encounter. Please give as you are able to this church within and beyond our walls as we share in singing our offertory hymn.
Wow. Masculinity can look a lot of ways. In this congregation, we teach the Our Whole Lives program, a comprehensive sexuality education that goes from childhood all the way through elder adulthood and include lessons. So when we speak, we are giving our children a clear message that beyond stereotypes of gender boundaries, men can be tender, women can be strong, people can exist beyond a binary of two sexes or genders in all the myriad ways that can be. You already know this. In some ways, this sermon is a point already made here, and we are glad of it. But beyond what we teach our children, beyond who we tell them they can be for themselves, there's another message that we as adults especially need. The teaching of fatherhood. For many of us, we grew up with particular stereotypes about what fathering looks like, what kind of parenting a male in the household can provide. And we need to offer to one another a larger idea of that. Parenting beyond a binary, sure, but also offering to ourselves and to one another a masculinity that is healthy and holy and whole enough to nurture the growth of a whole spiritual community, not only for our children, but for all of us. When we look at the world around us, I think it's pretty clear that gender barriers are breaking down, that they are different and less steep for many than things were when I was a child, when some of you were children. But there is also a backlash. There is reaction, there is rhetoric. In some ways, tightening of gender roles has also occurred. When we look in media and we find so many movies where the primary male characters, sure, they get lots of screen time, but they run, they jump, they hit people, and things explode. And it is not a whole and healthy masculinity. And we've seen this in the religious life as well. Religious rhetoric in some Christian denominations, the modern image of a Christian God as the Father, still gray and bearded, still all of those stereotypes that we named earlier in the service of judging, of punishment. God the Son, though more forgiving, has evolved in a strange way in Christian kitsch. A more masculine Christ, bro Jesus, exists now in the world of evangelical kitsch, busting his way off of the cross with his abs rippling. I just saw during my research for this sermon that you can buy hoodies that ask, "Do you even lift my name on high?" Oh dear. Bro Jesus certainly does exist. Only the Holy Spirit in this Trinity is allowed to transgress any kind of gender boundary, offering peace, caring, and vulnerability, but, as a bird, or a bodiless and formless aspect of divine energy. And yet, if we move back from some of that reaction, we find in the Bible itself Jesus as a healer, Jesus as an emotional connector, Jesus leading with reassurance and tenderness for those in need, as a teacher who loved children, a joyful storyteller who appreciated the beauty of flowers, of birds, of the gentle animals of the fields, and as a vulnerable person, a man longing for the company of friends when life was hard. In sum, as complex as any other person in the world, a healthy and whole person, a vision of a masculinity that is a possibility for all people. As we reach back further into the Jewish texts, we find in Isaiah a God who suckles humanity at his breast, a God who nurtures, a God who is more complex not because the masculine is abandoned, but because the imagination of what can be encompassed in a divine form spoken of in masculine terms includes more. So when we learn about fatherhood in these times, might it not include tenderness and nurturing, careful, caring, and gentle times, peacefulness together, and also joy and rambunctiousness, and all the powerful strength of emotions? Beyond the Abrahamic religious texts, we find gods of the ancient world, like Pan with that mischievous joy, bounties of free-flowing food and drink, the dad who grills or bakes or cooks, Apollo holding aspects of poetry, music, protection of the young, the Buddha, whose peace and calm offers space for understanding the emotional ebb and flow. In our modern world, the masculine is often equated with strength and aggression, with fighting, or with logic, reason, the emotionally devoid argument, or hierarchy, dominance, power over. This stereotyping leaves little room for depth or the complexity of a whole and rounded humanity. When the masculine fails to open space for acknowledging feelings, from early childhood, we ascribe emotional words to the cries of babies. That little boy is so mad, hear him holler. She's so sad because she's sleepy. She's crying because she's sad. We begin a long process when that happens of closing men off from the ability to name and experience their full emotional range. Research shows even now, baby boys are held less often and for less time than girls, learning early to deal with their emotions in tightly self-contained ways instead of reaching out for community care. Men learn not to hug, hold hands, or caress one another, instead given a good, solid slap or a punch in greeting, accompanying even a hug with a contest of strength, real good, firm handshake, or a solid back slap to make sure there's no confusion about their tenderness. And these kinds of limits harm us all. Suicide rates for men are higher than ever. And we note that even as women and non-binary people have been able to open up so much space beyond binaries, space in work, in fashion, the gendered limitations that men impose on one another remain strict and highly penalized. Pants are for everyone. Masculine fashion is seen as an understandable way of trading up into the realm of the privilege. And though I'm going to note that many of you are already transgressing this boundary that I have written, men wearing skirts, pastels, pinks and purples, or a beautiful floral pattern must must be willing to accompany that decision often with emotional energy to defend against aspersions on their manhood, simply for wearing comfortable and beautiful clothing that they like. A recent study showed that men are less likely to recycle when they are told that it is caring about the earth, when they are feeling insecure in their masculinity. It has impacts on everyone. There are so many pieces to this. And so this Father's Day, this Juneteenth weekend, when we speak of liberation, this month of pride, when we celebrate being beyond the binary, I challenge you all to play, to try on new ways of being, and play with gender stereotypes, to encourage a man in your life to talk about feelings, lowering his risk of heart disease and many other ills, to teach male children that they can hold hands as bros and hug and cuddle, to wear clothing that feels good, as some of our folks today are already doing. And to buy your dad or a male in your life who you know is a carer and a nurturer, buy him some flowers, maybe even some lovely pink ones. It's Father's Day, and men like beauty, even when the patriarchy tells them they shouldn't. Beauty and joy and tenderness are for everyone. So this Father's Day, know that it is all of our work to help expand the boundaries of masculinity, of the holy, the divine, and all of us right here on earth, so that all of us can be our fullest selves. This Father's Day, I invite you to smash the patriarchy and hold tenderly to the men among us, so that our fathers and our friends can be themselves without restriction. May it be so, and blessed be.
Anton de Saint-Exupéry writes, "All men have stars, but they are not the same things for different people. For some who are travelers, the stars are guides. For others, they are no more than little lights in the sky. For others, who are scholars, they are problems. But all these stars are silent. You alone, will have stars as no one else has them. In one of the stars I shall be living. In one of them I shall be laughing, and so it will be as if all the stars will be laughing when you look at the sky at night. You, only you, will have stars that can laugh. And when your sorrow is comforted, time soothes all sorrows. You will be content that you have known me. You will always be my friend. You will want to laugh with me, and you will sometimes open your windows. So for that pleasure, it will be as if, in place of the stars, I have given you a great number of little bells that knew how to laugh." Please join me now in singing our closing hymn, number 1012, When I Am Frightened.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me? Stand by me willingly. Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me? Comfort me tenderly. Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love.
I invite you to join me in saying together our words to extinguish the chalice. We extinguish our chalice flame,
but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment.
These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We become because of those who came before. We believe because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision. And we too dream as we look at the stars in love. So let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, and to bow to the mystery that is greater than we could ever imagine. Blessed be, and go in love.
Okay, so we have about a half an hour before the meeting. Go ahead and